tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di torno girano.
Hey friends, welcome back to She's At It Again. Today I need to make some bread because I'm going to make something with it in a day or two, but I wanted to take you through the process, and this would be considered French bread normally, but this is actually Italian bread. And you might be like me, I had to actually look up the difference because I've been calling both things this whole time. French bread is longer and skinnier generally. Italian bread is a shorter loaf that's plumper. And Italian bread uses a fat in it, such as olive oil or butter or lard. And French bread normally does not contain the fat. So who knew? I just thought the stores like to call it that to lure people in to buy it for a certain meal. So today we're going to be making what's more like an Italian bread because I'm adding olive oil to it, of course. So the first thing we want to do is take our water and put it in our mixing bowl. If you do not have a stand mixer, don't panic. You're going to get some good arm usage and build some muscles up, but you don't necessarily need a mixer. I've done this by hand several times, and yes, your arms are sore, but it works beautifully like that. So I have about a cup, just a tiny bit over a cup of warm water. And when I say warm, I just mean it feels like warm bath water. Anything over 120 degrees is not going to be good for your yeast, so I would steer clear of doing that. If you have a thermometer to measure it with, that would be great. We're going to add just a little bit of honey, and when I say a little bit, about a teaspoon. To that, we are going to add almost 2 teaspoons of dry yeast. Now, I buy yeast in a lot bigger packages than this. I just happen to keep it in this jar. And I store mine in the refrigerator. The big package I store in the freezer for longer storage, but I go through it pretty quick. All right, normally I would say let's wait until this gets kind of active and frothy, but I can see right now the edges of it are actually starting to do just that. So we're going to continue ahead. If I weren't making a video, I would just walk around a couple minutes and do something else and come back once the active yeast actually got active. To this, we're going to add about a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil. And as you can see, I don't really measure a lot when it comes to bread because I make a lot of bread. Not to say I've never messed up bread, but I just make it enough to where I don't feel like I need to measure it. All right, I'm going to put 3 cups of flour in this. I'm going to take this camera and show what this looks like down in there. All right, I'll take it over here and add my 3 cups of just plain flour. When I say plain flour, it's just organic. It's not bleached, of course, just organic plain flour, not self-rising. And the way I measure mine is I dip it out and then I shake my cup to where it's level. That ensures that there's no air bubble in there that's going to take up space where the flour should be, leaving me less flour than what I should have. Now to top this off, we'll need a teaspoon of salt and just put it directly on top of your flour. We're going to mix all this together. Now, I also want to back up and say, if you don't have honey, if honey's something you don't regularly keep in your house, I keep a lot of it. You know, I make a lot of things with honey. But if you have a piece of fruit, such as a banana, that can be stirred and evenly distributed, especially a really overripe banana. I'm not talking about one that's green on the end. If you have a piece of an overripe banana, just pinch the end of it off, about what looks like about a tablespoon worth of banana. Add that to your yeast, and that will act as the sweetener for the yeast to feed on. I did this the other day on a loaf of bread, and I was like, now that's pretty ingenious. I had to pat myself on the back for that one. It did not taste like banana at all, but it wasn't that I was out of honey. I was just going to try it and see if it worked. And it worked beautifully, so I was so excited. So if you're out of honey, try a piece of an overripe banana. Now we're going to turn this mixer on and let it run for 5 minutes. Then I'll come back, turn it off, and let it rest for 5 minutes. Then we'll turn it back on and let it mix for a lot longer time. So let's go the 5 minutes for right now. Just turn it on a regular speed, not throwing anything out of the bowl here. Just turn it on regular kneading speed. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. Turn it off. I'm going to take my just a flexible plastic bench scraper. I love this silly thing. We're going to bring our dough down to the bottom part of the hook. I don't like for it to get stuck to the top because that part doesn't get mixed up. I'm going to give you a description of this dough. And if your dough does not feel like this, then you need to either add more water to it or not, or add more flour to it, or it's just fine. This dough, you should be able to hold it, put it back and forth in your hands like this, and it not stick. So if it's sticking to your hands and you just can't get it off, it's too wet. If this dough has pockets of dry flour in it, or if your mixer is having a hard time just kneading it, or if you're seeing it not mix well. And I don't really know a different way to describe that other than that, so I apologize. But I will tell you, this should feel like baby skin. I'm not talking about a toddler that's been out in the yard. I'm talking about like really tiny baby skin. There should be almost a moistness to it, but just super, super soft. So if your dough is not that way, if it's too dry, add just a little bit of water in it. Keep mixing. You're going to be mixing this thing again for 40 minutes, and you've got plenty of time to get the water incorporated in it. But if you leave it too dry, it's not going to have the elasticity to rise and get to be a big puffy loaf. If it's too wet, what you're looking at is having a loaf that is flat, and it's not going to be cooked throughout in the appropriate way. But I don't want to scare you away from doing this because this is so easy. I always think if I can do this, anybody can do this. So that's why I say it's easy. It is not difficult to achieve. And it's actually kind of hard to mess up if you don't follow directions. But I would love to just come and do baking demonstrations for people. That'd be like a dream come true. But if we can't have it in person, I just need to give you that explanation. It should feel like really soft baby skin. So we're going to let this rest for 5 minutes. That's going to allow the gluten to relax, and then we'll turn the mixer back on and let it go for 40 minutes. So I'm not going to come back and do all that and say, okay, I'm turning the mixer on. So what I'll do now is I'll say, this is going to rest for 5 minutes. Then I'm going to come back and turn the mixer back on just like we had it a while ago. Let it run for 40 minutes. I'm going to go out there in the sunroom and do some ironing in the meantime. So you got to be productive when you can. And then I'll come back when the mixer goes off in the 40 minutes and show you what it looks like at that point. Okay, 40 minutes has passed. I got a little bit of ironing done. We are going to take our dough, make sure it's cleaned off the dough hook. Better unplug this first. Nothing like having that come back on while you got your hand stuck in it. my mixer tends to migrate a bit while it's turned on for that long. So every once in a while I have to look in the kitchen. I've been known to, I actually videoed it at one point. My mixer got to where it was teetering on the side of the countertop. That'll cause your heart rate to speed up just a little bit. Oh my goodness. All right, I'm going to take this and just scrape the inside of my bowl. So all of it will be in one big blob of dough. And this is what our dough looks like. It is very stretchy. It is very relaxed. And we're going to put a shower cap over it. And we're going to let this rise. For an hour. So we'll be back in an hour. I'm going to do nothing to this. It is just sitting in an air-conditioned room. It's probably around 74, 75 degrees in here. I'm not sure what the thermostat's set on, but just an average temperature. Now, if it's the winter time and you're watching this and you need to put this in a warm spot, pick either a closet where your water heater or something like that is, or even in an oven just with the light turned on, not with the oven turned on, but just with the light turned on. Give it a warm, humid environment and it'll do great. So we're going to let this rise for 1 hour and then we'll come back and shape our loaf. So we'll be right back. Okay, hour is up and this is what our dough looks like. Give you a closer look at it. So we're going to rake this out on the countertop. That was considered the first rising. Now, if you know anything about baking bread, there's 2 risings. So the next one's coming up. My countertop is clean because I just wiped it down. I finished my ironing and I wound up going outside pulling up or digging up volunteer crepe myrtles, so I had to make sure I didn't have leaves and stuff all over me when I walked back in. All right, we'll put that over there, that over there. And as you can see, this isn't real sticky. It's not going to stick to the countertop that much. I'll get my marble rolling pin out. It's pretty heavy. I don't even have to exert that much pressure on it. So what we're going to do is roll out our dough into a rectangle. And we're not going to roll it too big because, again, Italian bread is short and squatty instead of long and skinny like French bread, apparently, which I didn't know that till I read that. I don't know if they're just making it up, but it sounded good. And you have to take into consideration how much space your baking pan has on it too. A lot of times I will place mine diagonal in my pan just because I have a tendency to make a longer loaf of bread. You can put a dusting of flour down on your countertop if it sticks real bad, but because mine is a quartz countertop, it just doesn't stick that much. Okay, so this is our loaf of bread. Try to get it as evenly sized all the way down. Here is our baking pan. I really didn't need one that long, did I? All right, so after that, you're going to take a towel, just a kitchen towel, put it over it. I'm going to put this out in the sunroom where it's a little bit warmer and a little more humid than it is inside. Put that out there, and we're going to let this rise between 45 minutes and an hour. And then when we come back, we'll cut the top. We'll brush the top of it after we make slashes in it. Brush the top of it with an egg white, and it'll make it real shiny when it bakes. Plus, when we come in, I'll have to preheat the oven. So hopefully I'll remember to preheat it before I turn the cameras on and waste your time doing that. So we'll be back. I'm going to put this out in the sunroom. I'm going to go walk the dogs real quick while this is doing its second rising. So remember, 45 minutes to an hour, just about when it's doubled in size. So we'll be back. Okay, we're back. Look at my little helper down there. Lacey, get out of her bowl. That's not your food. It's like herding cats. Okay, so our timer went off on our oven, and this has risen. So what I've done, instead of separating my egg yolk from my egg white, I might need a whole egg for something, and this isn't going to get crumbs and stuff in this. I'm not worried about cross-contamination with the gluten. So I'm just going to dip my very soft silicone brush down in here. We're going to brush over this with the egg white. If you get egg yolk in it, it's not that big of a deal. It's just going to be a little bit of a different color, but I'm not crazy about the strong flavor of an egg yolk on some things, and bread's one of those. So I try to just use the egg white. Being careful not to deflate your bread, but it's pretty resilient. Make sure you get it all covered. My plans are to make a new sandwich that I have a recipe for on this bread. It's going to be one big giant sandwich, and we're going to divide it up. So stay tuned for that video coming up. Hopefully I'll get that done in the next day. But you don't want to do it with freshly baked bread because it's just a little soft on the inside. You got to let it at least firm up for about a day. Okay, get the lid back on that. It'll go back in the fridge. You're going to take a very sharp knife. I just sharpened this one again. And we're going to do a few cuts down that side. A few cuts down this side. You can do whatever design you want. And that's my favorite for right now. So, nothing drastic. But I think you can see the slashes on there. We're going to pop this in the oven. I have the oven preheated to 375. And we're going to bake this for about 20 minutes, but I'll check it at about 15 and see what it looks like, but I'll turn the cameras on before we take it out of the oven, so we'll be right back. Okay, taking our bread out. This took right at 15 minutes. And I sneak my supper in the oven while this is baking too, so that always helps. Okay, we're just going to let this cool. I'll let this cool out here for a while, then I'll put it in the lower oven so it can cool in more of a confined space, just a little bit of humidity. And then the next video, hopefully in line after this one, will be where I make a new sandwich with this. I'm excited to try it. I'm excited to share it with you, but I think it's going to be fun. So thanks for joining us. I really hope you give this a try. Such simple ingredients. I know I say that all the time, but I know you got flour at your house. I know you got some yeast at your house. And if you don't have it, I bet you could borrow some from somebody. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to sharing something again with you real soon. Recipes in the description, and hopefully it's comprehensive enough where you can figure it out without having too much of a panic. If not, email me. My email address should be in the description of the video as well. Thanks for joining us, guys. Bye.
Alla gloria militar, cherubin alla vittoria, alla gloria militar, alla gloria militar, alla gloria